Welcome to Enjoy the Journey podcast, where we interview expert entrepreneurs and thought leaders to help guide you in pursuit of financial freedom. Presented to you by Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, where we help service-based business owners remove cash flow bottlenecks, maximize their profits, and turn business profits into personal wealth. G'day guys, this is Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor for the Enjoy the Journey podcast. And I've got a very special guest with me here today, Jamie Stenhouse, who was introduced to me by one of my private clients, Elena Snyder. And Elena knew she's got a little bit of a sixth sense for these kinds of things that Jamie and I had hit it off. Had a conversation recently, and I was very intrigued by Jamie's business model of helping agency owners essentially systemize their businesses to allow them to continue to scale. So I wanted to have Jamie on the podcast to unpack some of his genius, talk a bit about his story, and help some of you guys around continuing to grow and scale your agency. So Jamie, thanks for joining us, mate. How's things?
No worries. Thank you for having me, and things are always good.
That's good to hear, my friend. So Jamie, tell us a little bit about you and your story.
So in terms of, I guess, my history, a quick sort of snippet would be dropped out of high school because of my speech. I used to have / still have a speaking impediment that comes up from now and then. Inside high school, it was quite harsh to where I was unable to, I guess, complete high school because of it. So dropped out, did a small degree in graphic design and multimedia stuff, and then begun freelancing, and that quickly turned into an agency. Fast forward 11, 12 years, we've had customers in over 150 different industries. We've got a team of 18 now, and things are pretty good.
Fantastic, mate. Well, look, it's a really interesting story. I was reading through your bio, and I guess the whole idea of trying to kind of hide yourself away with the mission of kind of never speaking again, and
Yes.
kind of being kind of locked away in your dungeon doing IT stuff. What was that kind of reality like when you finally realized that you weren't going to be able to escape that kind of harsh reality of having to be in front of people, communicate, and kind of manage your speech?
Yeah, so I think it became aware to me when I tried to get a job before I started my freelancing and the agency. I tried to get a job as an 18-year-old, and my intention was that trying to hide behind a sort of keyboard for as long as I could. And as soon as I tried to apply for jobs, everyone is asking, well, can you do front desk? Can you do help support? I'm like, not really what I signed up for. So then I managed to hide away for about 2.5, 3 years. And during that process, from the age of about 17, 18 to probably 22, 23, just through going through the journey of entrepreneurship and honing in on my skills and, slowly talking to other people in the industry and slowly talking to clients, you naturally get a more self-worth or more confidence in yourself. And that really helps to even out a speaking impediment as well. Mm-hmm. So by the time I was about 22, 23, I was capable to conduct like a few client meetings a week, a few client calls a week. And then I took it upon myself that, okay, I've got this level of confidence. I can somewhat keep my speech under control to some degree. And then I seeked professional help through a speaking course. I did it about 10 times over the course of a year and a half. So I threw myself into that. And then I guess the other side, I knew how to control it to some degree. And then I haven't been able to stop talking since, I guess. And fantastic. I think it's this trying to play catch up in terms of, I had so many years where I wasn't sharing my expertise or helping clients or helping other people in my community, right? And now, as much as I can, I'm always up for talking or sharing ideas or, trying to help out the actual industry as a whole.
That's amazing, mate. Look, I really connect with that story and resonate with that story. As a kid, I was a really, really shy kid. We kind of moved around a lot, and I kind of just got over trying to make friends. I was a bit of a loner, and I was always baby-faced. It's one of the reasons why I grew this beard, Jamie. I got to try and look a little bit older. But starting my career early on, it was one of those things of self-worth. It was really the biggest thing. Are people ever going to take me seriously? Am I ever going to be heard? Am I ever going to have a voice? And I think it was really when I realized that it was all in my head, then you end up trying to play catch up, right? And similar to you, mate, they haven't been able to shut me up since. So, mate, there should be more of us in the world, hey?
I agree. Yes, definitely.
Fantastic, mate. So you went from IT. When did you see the opportunity to jump into agency land, particularly into marketing, Jamie?
So I think it just was a natural progression because once I started doing graphics, that led into online sites. And that kind of led into, okay, well, now that you've created this site for us, how sort of do we get conversions, and how sort of do we get leads and traffic? And so naturally it kind of just evolved from IT and online solutions into sales and marketing. It wasn't a conscious choice, I would say. It just kind of, I think it shifted as the landscape shifted, as social media became more of a thing in 2008, 2009. Then there were more questions about it and more requests for graphics and branding. And then from there into the landing pages. And then once Facebook ads launched, it kind of grew into this whole marketing service.
Fantastic, mate. Look, it's been one of the biggest growth areas that I've observed as a business owner of these marketers and agencies that are kind of popping up left, right, and center. And it is very much a minefield out there, Jamie. There's plenty of small business owners that potentially may not have had a great experience with marketers and agencies alike. So what set your agency apart, mate? Because you've obviously been very successful in your agency. I guess, what was your kind of USP that made you different and allowed you to scale?
So I would say that I started it on my own, and I was doing everything from the branding to the copywriting to the landing pages to the HTML code. And because I was the expert, it allowed me to build processes that allowed other people underneath me to become the expert as well. As a lot of newer agencies, they might be a good salesperson and they might know good copywriting, but that might be the extent of their sort of skills, right? So then they hire people which I can't really screen for, people they're not really sure how to judge their quality against as well. So I would say, since I have the full skill set personally, I can set the pace and the actual quality for everyone underneath me on my team pretty high. And then if anything does go wrong, which rarely happens anymore, I know that I can bring that up to our standard and, keep that client on board and keep delivering those leads for them too.
Amazing. I think that's so important. I think the common trap that many agencies find themselves in is, you're right, they might have a key competency, or they're really good at something, and then they take on too many clients, and then the whole thing blows up, and they have these growing pains and these problems with scaling. And you've scaled up a number of successful agencies. So what do you think was the key to your success? Why were you able to scale when many other agencies haven't been able to?
I think because I took the time to reverse engineer what I was doing, and I approached it from, okay, I know that I'm good on my agency, so how do I clone myself? And I tried to buy a cloning machine. They're not out yet. So I was like, okay, well, I may as well reverse engineer the work that I'm doing and then create processes around that. As opposed to a common example is, some agencies might create processes around tasks they haven't actually executed yet.
Yeah.
Some agencies might sort of create processes around things that haven't even happened yet. Because I had that history and I knew the workflow, and I already had hundreds of sort of clients come through, I was like, okay, well, now that I'm ready to scale after 6 or so years, it's okay. It's pretty easy to create those processes because I had that experience there. And something we tell our clients is, before you build a process, before you outsource anything, you need to understand it. Like you need to understand, not so much from an expert point of view, but understand what is good quality for that task, how long it should take, what are the inputs, what are the different targeting options, what should it be looking like, right? And once you understand that, it's very easy to design a process, because you should have a very clear start and end point and different milestones in between it too. The best processes are essentially created with real life scenarios, as opposed to created in like isolation. So a lot of people will take off 2 weeks and they'll try to create every single process on their own with no clients coming through them. And then the moment the first client comes through it, things just break down, right? So as I was scaling, I was doing the work. I had my team helping me out. And as that was happening, I was creating the sort of process as the client was walking through that workflow. This way, I knew that the process was actually created around a real life scenario rather than what could potentially happen. And that way, when the next client comes in, that sort of trail has already been carved away from the first initial clients too. And this way, the more clients you put through that process, the more it should improve, and the quicker and easier things should get over time, which is quite counterintuitive, because when people think about scaling, they think that the more clients they close, the harder things get. But it should be the inverse if your processes have been designed properly, of course.
And I think that's a common thing, mate. I think that many people are so fearful of things breaking Because I think, let's face it, we've all been conditioned from kids not to fail, and we're reprimanded when we fail. So the whole idea of having a process in your business that breaks is seen as a bad thing. Whereas in actual fact, it's a way of actually seeing, well, what do I need to optimize next? And there's no better way to do that than with a real life client, right?
Yes, of course. Yes. And I say this to my team all the time, is that if there's any problems, any questions, give me a yell. And what I've trained my team to now execute on is that if there's a problem, they will bring me into that process, or if there's some question or some unknown or some confusion, it's a highlight that then essentially that process can be improved. And, very rarely does that problem impact the actual client project, because if there's a problem, your sort of team should stop rather than keep going.
Sure.
So then if there's a problem, the sort of team stops, they bring me in, I then update the actual process, and things keep ticking along. And this way, my team is indirectly improving the process by highlighting questions, problems, concerns, and maybe things that are a little bit confusing too. As opposed to some agencies, when their team's going through a process and something isn't going to plan, they blame their team rather than, which doesn't help anyone. So instead it's like, okay, if the team's doing something wrong, it's probably not their fault, because no one comes to work to do an incorrect result. Hopefully not anyway.
Sure.
So meaning that if the end result was not correct, something in that process told your team that the way they were doing it was correct, even if it's not. So therefore it's not our team's fault. It is the compass was like out of line, or something was not clear, or there's some confusion, right? So instead, we're always looking at updating our processes rather than, I guess, replacing our team or sort of training our team as well. Because if you give someone a clear to-do list and they still execute on it wrong, then it's probably the fault of the list, not the individual.
Interesting. I like that concept. So one of the things that I guess we look at is, once we've got a process, how do we find the right people to carry out that process? Now, what's your view on finding the right people?
Essentially, I look for communication skills above anything else. So if I had a choice of someone who is really experienced at Google AdWords and someone who generally understands the platform, except that generalist has really good communication skills, I'll always hire the generalist. The reason for that is because I don't want to rely on someone's creativity or someone's expertise or someone's experience so much, because you can't duplicate them. Like, you can't clone an A player. What you can clone is your processes, and what you can duplicate are then your sort of procedures, protocols, all of that, right? So by hiring a general, normal person who then can communicate and read processes properly, if they are a really good communicator, they should be able to ask you very sharp questions. For example, hey, Jamie, I'm a little bit confused about this targeting input. Do you mean this or this? Okay, well, that's a very clear question. I can see where he generated that question from the hole in the process. Rather than answer him, I'll then go into the process, I'll update it, and I'll tell him, go through the process again, and then you'll find your answer. This way, our processes improve rather than our team improves. Because yes, you want your team to improve, but again, you're now creating a company that is reliant on individuals, which you rent, rather than processes that you own. So in terms of looking for really good people to drive those processes, communication skills for me is number one, just above anything else. Because if you can converse with someone, you can almost solve any problem, right? Sure. So that's like the most important thing for me, is looking for communication skills.
And that's a really interesting perspective, Jamie. It's the first time I've heard someone put it that way, with the whole idea of renting your staff and owning the process. And I think that for many people in business, particularly aspirational business owners who are looking to scale up, they think the only way that they can scale up is getting A players. I guess, where did you discover the difference? Did you ever find yourself hunting for the A players and then your mindset shifted?
Yeah, so I definitely did early on. And what I saw is very quick growth, and it's very alluring to have someone solve all of your problems for you. And then it's very terrifying when that person steals your clients, when that person leaves you, when that person demands triple the amount you're currently paying them, and now they're earning more than you, or like they're sick, or they want to take a holiday because they can. It's like when you're reliant on a single point of failure, it makes things very risky. Although it allows you to grow quickly, because you don't have to design anything, you don't have to, create your processes or sort of your team portal or anything like that. it can lead to quick growth and quick drops as well. So I much prefer a sustainable, predictable scaling growth that over time outperforms any set of A plays, and that creates a company that then can be sold because it's got the processes installed into the company rather than installed into the individuals.
Makes a lot of success. It makes a lot of sense, mate. And do you attribute that to the success, like the successful sale of your second agency?
Definitely, I do. That second agency, it was good. It was actually really good, but it wasn't as large as the main agency, and it wasn't designed to be as large. It was just designed to be a little cash cow, and that sold because of all the processes it sort of had in play, right? And that's sort of a key example of, here's this thing which I've created. It can transfer hands and produce predictable results regardless of who was driving it. Right. So yes, I do sort of accredit that to all of those processes inside there.
I think that's so important, Jamie, because look, we talk about this a lot when it comes to understanding the value of your business. There's cash flow businesses and there's growth businesses. And I think many marketers and agency owners are under the false illusion that their business has value. But if their business is built on A players and built on people, and it's a business that's, say, months to month or short-term contracts, and there's very little value in that business, because the reality is if the leader leaves, the risk of everything else leaving is going to be amplified. However, if we've got a repeatable system that you can plug anyone in, or even the better, the leader can actually be out of the business and the business is still producing profit. It's a well-oiled machine that, as you said, it can be a cash cow. So I think this is something that more agency owners and overall, I think more cash flow businesses need to be focusing on, because that's where the real value is. So talk to me about scaling a business these days. Like, obviously marketing has become a little bit of a landmine, Jamie. From what we've seen, obviously Facebook ads have been really unpredictable. Cost per acquisition is going up. Paid advertising is becoming more expensive. So what other options have people got out there to grow and scale their business, whether they be an agency owner or another service-based business owner?
I think it comes down to knowing what the most important thing is for your outcome. So if we look at sales and prospecting and closing deals, the most important thing is having as many conversations as you can with as many prospects per day. Now, in understanding that, doing advertising is a good approach to automate that conversational component. Although, as you just alluded to, it is getting more expensive. It is getting a little bit more pricey. So the alternative is, okay, well, if we're in a service-based industry, let's take my sort of industry here. What happens to get agency clients is, you just got to have more conversations with more prospects. And a good platform for that is cold outreach, except not in the sense that most people are accustomed to. So when I say cold outreach, people think about spammy LinkedIn automations, right? And that used to work well up until about 2018. And then suddenly people discovered it all at once. Now it's just automations talking to other automations. Like there's like no real human sort of connection at all. So the alternative is, okay, well, if I, the CEO, the founder who knows my product the best, who then can probably sell the product the best, if I was on social media and if I was prospecting, what would I be doing? Well, I might be viewing profiles, I might be endorsing profiles, I might be sharing content, I might be answering questions inside groups, I might be replying to my inbox, I might be connecting, I might be congratulating new prospects on their career change or on their anniversary, or if they're doing a live stream, I might engage on that. Right? There's about 28 to 32 different interaction points on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, online forums, cold email, all these platforms. When people think about cold outreach, they think about connecting and inboxing. That's 2 out of a possible 32 interaction points. Yeah. Right now, the reason people aren't doing the whole 32 is because it's time consuming, and nor should they be doing it. But it's also impossible to automate that because there's no tools or apps or anything like that. So the alternative is, okay, if I know what to do, I know how to reply to a comment inside a group, I know how to endorse someone's profile, I know how to reply to someone's Instagram story or Instagram live, right? So I'm going to create a process for how I execute that task. I'm going to create these scripts, the different triggers to make a choice of, okay, should I reply with this comment or this comment? Should I share this in here or that inside there? And what happens is, if you do this right, you'll create a whole process sheet of how to pretty much duplicate yourself on social media and hire someone to do outreach for you. Now, when I say outreach, what it is essentially starting up new conversations and engaging in existing conversations.
Yeah.
And this is how you create relationships at scale. So rather than just spamming people, you're actually creating relationships as if it was yourself without you ever touching the keyboard. Now, that sounds like a huge claim, but it is extremely possible once you reverse engineer what it is you do. And it's not hard. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of, thought into it, but it's definitely achievable to sort of replace yourself on social media, have someone prospect for you and get those sales in or get those appointments scheduled. And I mean, that's such a good approach to cold outreach. And it's something that we've been doing since 2016. And that's only improved over time, year after year. As with ads have been hit and miss. Yeah. We've heard a lot of companies complain that LinkedIn or Facebook don't seem to work, although we are generating anywhere between 4 to 6 calls each day for the last 4 years. So to us, it seems to be working. Yep. And there's no secret script. There's no secret hack or any, weird little trick. It's just about real relationships at scale. That's all it is. It's just speaking to more people, caring about them, what they're trying to achieve. And if you can help them, then engage them. If not, then, go on to the next person. There's enough prospects out there for everyone.
Yeah. And there's a huge opportunity. I think LinkedIn's been a big growth area for us. And there's 2 ways to do LinkedIn. I feel that there's the people who are just, as soon as you connect, and the first message out of the gate is, "Hey, Jamie, do you want to buy my shit?" And says, of course, no. How can they think in their right mind that is actually going to work?
There is some component of that which will work. The problem is that it's only going to work for like the top 2%, top 3% of prospects who need that solution immediately right now, regardless of who delivers it to them. So if it didn't work in you, you're probably the wrong type of prospect, right? And it is a very hit and miss scenario just to shoot from the hip, because you're only going to get like 1 or 2% conversion rate, right? If that. So I get where their thinking is, but also it's just slack and lazy. I know a lot of our clients come from prospects who don't initially engage or initially reply. Like the cash and the profit and the clients are in those who say no more than those that say yes. Like
it's in that follow-up, right?
Exactly. If we look at any sales, any marketing campaign, there's usually anywhere between an 8 to 10% initial conversion rate, but there's another 80 to 90% of prospects who you haven't brought straight away. So let's engage them as well. And that's where a lot of your clients should be coming from. But again, having that process, having that team to make that possible is critical.
So let's talk about what you've been working on recently, Jamie. I guess you've got all this tremendous IP. You've scaled up some amazing agencies. You're doing some really great stuff. But unlike many people who kind of keep this under lock and key and don't want to share this with anyone, you're sharing this openly with other agencies to help them scale. So talk to us a bit about that.
In about 2018, I was talking to a few other agency owners, and there was a recurring topic that kept coming up, and was that people were struggling to scale and struggling to build a virtual team. I was, as a 27-year-old with I think I had 14 virtual staff then, and I was taking 3 months off every single year routinely. So I would be in Greece for 3 months and then home for 9 months and then America for like 3 months, right? And this was just my normal lifestyle. And I thought nothing of it. And I was shocked that this is not a common thing. I was like, what do you mean you're at work every single day? That's so weird. So then in 2018, I started to put together a program that walks companies through how to think about processes, how to design procedures, how to create quality control triggers that allow them to step away from their company. And we go through the 2 core teams, which I've used. So we go through creating a sort of team to do cold outreach first. And then from there, we go into the actual client delivery team. And we create every single process, every single procedure. We then go through the hiring, we go through the screening, onboarding, everything. And my secret agenda in that is to teach people how to clone themselves, how to think about processes, because I think that the second most important skill for any entrepreneur behind communication is knowing how to build procedures. Like if you know that, you can scale any company, you can hire anyone. So if you have communication down and if you have the art of engineering procedures, it's very easy and very predictable to scale. That's what I have been up to for the last almost 2.5 years now. And we've helped about 300 agencies, from small startups with 3 to 4 clients, all the way up to massive agencies who essentially have an in-house team of 42, except they're just chaotic, right? So
Sure.
this applies to small, applies to large, applies to everyone in between. And what we're trying to do is get the company organized, get the owner to sleep more, get the whole team to produce more with less output and sort of input, and then just scale in a predictable fashion without there being any bloodshed or tears, right?
That's often the case, right, with these businesses. And this is the reason why I like what you do, Jamie, is because most of these business gurus out there are talking about more leads, more clients. Yeah, leads and clients are important to a point, but the invisible ceiling that all businesses end up hitting, and that results in them not being able to scale any further, is process. And it's not sexy, it's not sophisticated, but it's one of those things that it's necessary. And I guess it's in the same wheelhouse as us. When we talk a lot about cash flow and talk about a lot of the boring stuff, that's what drives most of the value. So I think it's something that all agency owners should be doing. So what's the trigger for an agency owner, whether they be big or small, for them to say, hey, I need to work with Jamie? What are the common pain points and symptoms that they're experiencing where they need your help?
I would say I'll answer that in twofold. The first is it's a feeling. So if you sit down at your sort of computer and you see email from a client and you're like, like that feeling of like, oh, I'm doing this again, like this problem again, that's a sign that, okay, you shouldn't be on that task, first and foremost. But for something more tangible and something more, I guess, able to score against, is when you're at capacity in either two forms. Either you have too many leads coming in and you can't deliver on those leads. So either you're closing too many clients and you're at capacity, or you already have too many clients and you can't hire because you have no new leads coming in to then produce new cash flow, right? So, so it is either a problem of having too many leads, not enough delivery, or too much delivery that then you can't go out and prospect anymore.
Yeah.
And depending on what the starting point is, we'll either help someone to start with an outreach team to bring in more leads and close more sales, or we'll start on the in-house team to free up the owner so that they can then go prospect from then onwards. So essentially, if they're at capacity, if they don't have time to be doing the actual important things, it's probably time to look at replacing yourself with some well-defined processes.
Beautiful. And let's say that they take the plunge and they start working through this, Jamie. How long does it typically take them to start seeing the results, the fruits of their labor?
Not as long as you would think. I mean, we had someone in UK, and I reckon in about the 4th or 5th day, he was like, oh, now I get it. Like, this is what free time feels like. This is what having, I was like, yes. Like, and once you get that free time, a large pitfall is using that free time just to chill out.
Yeah.
Whereby the intention of sort of creating processes is to generate a excess of time to create further processes, right? So we start people off with the small looping annoying tasks, if that be invoicing, sales, prospecting, any sort of admin work, and that will free up like half an hour, a sort of hour every single day here and there. And with that free time, you then can tackle the onboarding processes or the actual ad campaign launching processes, right? So yeah, I mean, essentially you're looking anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 to 5 weeks, depending on how complex your delivery is, but it's not as long as people think. Like it's this huge thing that people think takes months and months, but you can start seeing returns on your time within a matter of weeks, as long as you take the right approach, as long as you figure out what processes should be sort of created first so that you can create that instant time return. Yep. And then tackling the next one, right? And just through doing that process and going through that journey within 3 to 4 weeks, you're like, oh, I could take some time off if I really wanted to.
Amazing. And so with this kind of newfound time, because I expect that after that period of time, the amount of time that they're winning back is continuing to compound, particularly if they are investing that time they found within creating more processes. What do most agencies in your experience end up doing with all of this time? What's the outcome?
That's a good question. They end up closing a lot more sales or working on exciting projects within their company. If that be a rebrand, if that be producing content, a lot of agency owners love to create content and love to be the front man, scale the way they want to scale. So some of them end up, creating very large brands for themselves. Some of them end up creating like an online portal for their clients, or like it just gives free time for the leader who is naturally a sort of creative person to be more creative, which
Fantastic.
is something which is, very much like dreamed about for a lot of us.
That's why you get into business, right? To do the stuff that you actually love doing, as opposed to the stuff that you end up groaning when you have to do the task.
Yes.
So, Jamie, if you had to give your top 3 tips on what agency owners should do to scale up their business, if you had to summarize it, what would be the top 3 things that they should be considering?
Understand before you systemise. So understand the task to some degree before you try to process it, which means going through it first. If it happens twice, outsource it. So for example, I might have an email come through. Okay, well, I will answer it. Next time that same email comes through, maybe from a different client, okay, I'm going to build a process around this, because if it's happened twice, it'll probably happen a third and fourth time, right? So understand before you systemise. If it happens twice, anything, admin, invoicing, replies, problems, whatever, build a process around it. The third is always try to solve problems from the upstream input. If you're doing an ad campaign and the headline is terrible, okay, well, what caused that headline to be terrible? It might be the copywriter, it might be the process, or maybe the onboarding procedure from the client, where you try to cover their examples, try to cover their intel isn't defined enough, and that's producing pretty poor quality material for then your team to be using to actually create that headline, right? So I guess that would be a sign of understanding cause and effect, and understanding like what is actually causing that problem, and looking upstream for the solution rather than looking at the current situation. So just to recap, those would be to understand the task before you systemise it. If it happens twice, outsource it, and look upstream for the problems and the solutions.
Amazing advice, mate. I think they're common sense, but I think it's hard to see the light through the trees when you're kind of stuck on the coalface, right? So I think that's amazing advice, mate. So Jamie, if there's agency owners that are watching this or listening to this, and they want to find out more about you, how do they get in touch?
Any way they can. I mean, look, I am a very normal person. I'm very approachable, as you know. If they want to approach me formally, they can go to jamiestenhouse.com. If they want to jam on Facebook, I'm more than happy to send them examples over Facebook, answer their questions, and just try to be a nice guy and generally help out.
I love that, mate. Look, you're always generous with the time. So guys, if you've listened to this podcast and anything Jamie said resonates with you, please make sure you do reach out. He's got a lot of knowledge, a lot of stuff to share. And so Jamie, thanks for joining us today, mate. And looking forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you for having me.